Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Science and Nature Untapped. I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. So if you were here for the year in review from the River Institute, you are at the right place, so welcome. Everybody who's watching us from Teams or for Facebook Live, you can always ask a question to our presenters. We have over 16 presenters this evening, so maybe there'll be a lot of questions. We love knowing where you're from, so if you can let us know in the chat box. I guess in Teams that would be on the right side, and on Facebook I believe it would be under the live video. So welcome to Science and Nature Untapped and our year in review for the River Institute. I'm just going to do a little countdown for Gabe at your TV. So 3, 2, 1, Gabe, it's all yours. So hello, everybody, and welcome to Science and Nature Untapped, a free virtual monthly speaker series brought to you by the River Institute. Tonight will be a special evening. We're doing our year in review for 2020, a year of adaptation. My name is Stephanie Hildebrand, and I'll be your host for this evening. So usually I don't really tell you who I am, and I just give you my name, so I'll introduce myself for everyone who doesn't know me. I am originally from Cornwall, Ontario. I went to school in fine arts. I have a background as a commercial photographer, and I came back to Cornwall for the environmental technician program at St. Lawrence College in 2018, and I've been working with the River Institute since 2019. So my role at the Institute, I've been working with the Great River Rapport. I have done all the visual communications and the design for the project, and I've done a lot of photography of all our scientists in the field, which you'll see in this presentation. So before we begin, this event, we'd like to acknowledge that many of us are living on unceded land and traditional territory of Indigenous people. We are grateful for the opportunity to live where we do, and we thank all the generations of people who have continued their responsibilities to Mother Earth since time immemorial. And on that note, I would like to read a post from Mayor Bernadette from Cornwall. So today is the National Day of Awareness of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. The Red Dress Project was founded in 2000 by Métis artist Jamie Black as a symbol to end deracialized and sexualized violence against women and murdered Indigenous women and girls. This day seeks to increase awareness of the disproportionate violence experienced by Indigenous women. According to the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, between the years 1980 and 2012, Indigenous women and girls represented 16% of all female homicides in Canada, while constituting only 4% of the female population. And so I think it's an important day, and actually probably every day, something that we should reflect on. So if ever you're interested in following our events, our research, education programs, we are on social media. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at the following handles. If ever you're interested in watching past presenters, you can go to riverinstitute.ca on tap, and there should be links for all of our YouTube videos for Science and Nature Untapped events. So many of our programs, our research, actually a lot of what our activities are funded by generous donors. So if ever you would like to support these programs, you can go to www.riverinstitute.ca/donate. It would be much appreciated. And another way that you can support us is by sharing our social media posts. It goes a long way, or to talk to your friends, you know, word of mouth. It goes a really, really long way. And so here we begin. I would like to invite Tria Tuck, our new chair of Board of Directors. So it's all yours, and thank you, Tria, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you for your great words and your guidance through tonight's events. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the River Institute's 2020 Year in Review. As Stephanie mentioned, I'm Tria Tuck, and I am the chair of the board for 2021. I replaced Walter Ogerle, who held this role for the past 6 years, taking a victory lap last year because of the COVID-19 pandemic. His leadership, knowledge of the environment, and passion for the river will be missed. So a very big thank you for Walter for his service over the years. You leave very big shoes to fill. 2020 saw us all face what seemed like insurmountable challenges of the global pandemic. Pivoting became a dominant theme. We had to pivot in order to keep going, but many of these challenges became opportunities, and we saw people reconnecting with nature and our environment. The River Institute staff-led COVID committee charted our course for safe work practices, exposure prevention, preparedness and response, and the transition to working from home. Commendable, admirable, impressive, excellent are just a few words that come to mind when I think of all we accomplished in 2020. And in spite of the pandemic, we still met, although it was virtual. We met to celebrate the accomplishments of 2020, such as our executive director, Jeff Riddell's milestone 25th anniversary with the River Institute. Jeff has been instrumental in building the organization into a center for excellence and a resource for scientists around the world. We also congratulated Chris Kritoff for his dedication to the environment through his work with the Raisin River Conservation Authority and by awarding him with the 2020 River Award. And we still did the work. Our research and projects continued, as can be seen by the launch of the Great River Report by Dr. McGaughey and her dedicated team in April of this year. We held a successful online river symposium and expanded our reach through virtual events to raise awareness and educate our communities. And we still continue to care. We care about the health of the river and its precious ecosystems. So we will continue to pivot, plot our course, and pull at those oars, because life does not stop just because a little virus has an apocalyptic agenda. I look forward to working with the board and the staff of the River Institute as we pilot our way through another year of opportunities and achievements. I now invite Jeff Riddell to introduce you to tonight's presentation. I am sure that you will be impressed. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tria, and thanks for that introduction and getting us started. And it's really great to have you on as the chair of the River Institute Board of Directors, and I believe our first chair who is a resident of Brockville. So it's great to see us expanding along the river. Well, what a year. As we look back at 2020, it reminds us that what an up and down journey it's been for the River Institute, of course, and for communities and for the world. And go to the next slide. At no other time have we felt as linked together globally as we cope with the same worldwide threat. Each country, each community, each organization has been forced to change, improvise, and find new ways to contribute, including, of course, us, the River Institute. In fact, for us as environmentalists, that global connection has a familiar ring because many environmental threats that we've thought about and worked on for a long time are global in nature: climate change, invasive species, and biodiversity loss as examples. And you know, we all have that feeling helpless in the face of these global threats. But what this past year has taught us and has really, I think, demonstrated is that we all have a role to play in addressing these issues, these threats, within our own communities, within our own ecosystems. So when we look at this past year, and we decided for our year in review, we decided to tell you our story, highlight our journey of the River Institute over the past year, and share some of our challenges and successes. Next slide, please, Stephanie. So it all starts with the staff. We are blessed at the Institute with a group of innovative, resilient, talented people that respond to the challenges that faced us this past year. We found new ways of carrying out our river research, our applied research and testing, and deliver our education and outreach programs. And you can see here the faces of the people who all contributed this past year, the staff members. Next slide. We also wanted to celebrate the valuable contributions of our directors, our volunteers, our partners and supporters. And as we moved online, actually it created an opportunity to expand our reach and to involve volunteers and people across Canada and as far away as Mexico to help us with our projects and programs. Next slide. So collectively, both virtually and adapting COVID-safe methods for our in-person activities, we found new ways to continue our core projects like the River Report and the FINS program that you're going to hear about tonight. Support our graduate student research on food webs, bat conservation, ecosystem recovery, create new online education, and continue our outreach programs such as the Science and Nature series, Untapped. Well, most of our staff transitioned to the work at home. We were able to keep our institute going to carry out our essential lab testing for our clients and municipalities, and that helped us keep the momentum going. And as things started to open up later in the year, we took advantage of programs to add to the subsidy programs that were out there to add new staff members and bring opportunities for mentoring and empowering young scientists, educators, and storytellers, and create new programs to fill the sudden gaps that were there that became available. These young people helped generate a new energy and brought about new ideas and new innovation to our projects. And so what we wanted to do tonight was take this opportunity to showcase our staff and let them tell you about their work in their own words. So we're aiming for some short presentations by most of our people that you already sort of seen their faces, and hopefully leaving lots of times for question and answer. Don't hesitate to type in the chat box if you've got questions or as you think of that. One of the key things that really helped us this past year was establishing at the very beginning of this a COVID committee. And next slide, Stephanie. So we're going to start this this session off with Crystal Martel, our biosafety officer, who helped lead up the COVID committee. This was so instrumental in helping us stay ahead of the COVID curve and creating a sense that things were being taken care of, thought about, and helping us through those initial first days in early part of 2020. So it's all yours, Crystal.
Thank you, Jeff. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Crystal Martel. I'm a lab technician and the quality control and biosafety officer at the River Institute. So because of my knowledge as a biosafety officer and my years of experience in the lab, I was asked to lead the COVID-19 committee last March. As a committee, we were tasked with staying on top of the ever-changing situation and helping the River Institute adapt to these circumstances. So it was thanks to the commitment of the COVID-19 committee and the willingness of all the staff to comply with these changes that we put in place that we were able to have such a successful year despite a pandemic. Everybody pitched in and contributed to a productive year and a safe year. So we're very happy, and I couldn't be prouder to be part of such an amazing team. So thank you. And I pass it off to you, Lee.
Hi, everyone. I am a research scientist at the River Institute, and I'm also the project lead for the Great River Report. And I'm excited today to get to tell you a little bit about the project. It's a health report on the Upper St. Lawrence River. And early last year, we selected the final suite of ecological indicators for the report. A key feature of the indicators is that they actually came out of the responses we had from the public. So from all of you, we had 450 people complete a survey, an online survey, and we took that completed survey and we took it to the scientists and we said, this is what the community is concerned about. How can we address those concerns and how can we answer their questions? And we came up with this suite of 35 indicators. So we've been able to make a lot of progress through 2020. So COVID hit, of course, in March, and we just picked the indicators, but we were able to still turn to a desktop approach and write out to or make data requests up and down the river to partners and government organizations that hold the data and bring it together. And that work is still ongoing. We also, in the last part of the year, reached out to community members and asked them to share their stories with us. And we were able to capture those stories, and we're busy sharing them at the moment through Perch Magazine, which is an exciting offshoot of the project that we've been working on. An important element of the project is, of course, that it's in partnership with the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, and it's framed in the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address, We're really lucky to have Abram Francis, who's pictured in the slide you see, and also Megan Mitchell, who have been actively involved in engaging with the Mohawk community and bringing the Indigenous perspective to the project. So as I said, we were able to adapt really well when COVID hit, and the team grew considerably last year. So we had Marianne Proran, who joined us in March of last year. She's a PhD coming out of the University of Ottawa. She now leads the technical report, and you'll hear from her next. Stephanie Hildebrand took on design and communications. Victoria Ransom is providing us with Indigenous artwork, and Zach Swanenberg joined us at the very end of the year to develop our website. So we've also been really lucky to have dedicated volunteers who have made significant contributions, and we're happy to turn one of those volunteer positions into a research assistant position and welcomed Amanda Nurse to the team of scientists. So if you're interested in knowing more about the project, please go and see our website that Tria mentioned. We just released it last month. We're really grateful to Zach for building it and for Steph for guiding all the visuals for that project. And it's really just the backbone of the project. The indicators are going to come, but you can read about the 3-year journey that's got us to this point, and we're really happy to have it up so people can go and look. If you have your own short stories to share, there's a place for you to do that. And if you want to know more about the project, you can sign up for our newsletter. So with that, I'll hand over to Marianne Perron.
Thank you, Lee. So my name is Marianne Perron. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the River Institute, and I work mainly on the Great River Report with Lee. Bonjour, je m'appelle Marianne Perron. Je suis en train de compléter un stage postdoctoral ici à l'Institut. Et en 2020, j'ai dirigé un atelier communautaire pour les francophones qui vivent aux alentours du fleuve pour notre projet Le rapport sur le Grand Fleuve. Il y avait une dizaine de participants qui nous ont donné des commentaires, puis ensemble, ils se préoccupent des populations de poissons et d'invertébrés dans le fleuve et aussi comment la qualité d'eau en amont affecte les écosystèmes en aval. Si vous êtes intéressé à participer à un atelier pour le rapport sur le Grand Fleuve en français, s'il vous plaît, envoyez-moi un courriel. Puis mon courriel, c'est au bas du diapo là. So in addition to the French community workshops, I've also been leading the technical report for the River Report. And we now have a big team of dedicated scientists working on it. So the technical report describes our process to calculate the ecological indicators to help explain the health of the river. We review all of the research on each of our 35 indicators, and then we connect with all of the scientists who are doing the research around the river. We combine all that data to calculate the indicators to determine trends in the river through time. For example, we have Max Irwin, who has been working on osprey populations through time, and he's found that, as many of you probably noticed, osprey populations have recovered since the 70s. To give you another example, Amanda Nurse has been working on our American eel indicator, and data has shown that eel populations have decreased through time in the upper St. Lawrence. We're excited to share all of this information with you, so keep a close eye on our new website, riverreport.ca. I would also like to give a big shout out to our whole technical report team, Amanda, Sylvia, Max, Allison, Megan, Neil, Steph, Lee, Jackie, and everyone else who has contributed to the project so far. On another note, I'm also working on another project at the Institute. I'm an odonatologist, which is a dragonfly scientist, and I have an exciting dragonfly project planned for this summer of 2021. So several river dragonfly species in Canada are actually endangered, and conservation practices are needed to ensure their viability. This summer, I'm studying the habitat requirements of river dragonflies and going to collect information on the habitats of the endangered species, the Rapids clubtail. This project will hopefully help detect new populations of the Rapids clubtail to ensure the conservation of river dragonfly communities moving forward. I'm now going to pass it off to another one of our scientists, Matt Window, so he can give you an update on his important research.
Thank you, Marianne. Matt Wendell. I'm a research scientist and fish biologist at the River Institute. I'm actually entering my 8th year at the Institute, and I get to work on a number of research projects that are looking into the health of the St. Lawrence River. And today I just want to share some highlights from one of our largest ongoing research programs, the FINS project. The FINS project stands for Fish Identification Nearshore Survey, and it's a great partnership between the River Institute and the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne that was started way back in 2015. The overall goal of this project is to study the health of the ecosystems of the upper St. Lawrence River. And so to do this, we conduct nearshore fish surveys and take extensive measurements of aquatic habitats, including water quality, vegetation, nutrients, and shorelines. Despite the challenges of 2020, and there were many, I'm happy to report that it was one of our most successful project years to date. And this was largely due to a great and dedicated team and having protocols in place to allow the team to work safely and effectively. Some highlights from 2020, despite a delayed start to the field season, we were able to survey sites all the way from Kingston to Montreal. We documented 24,000 fish from 50 species, and we added new research tools to our project. These tools include using environmental DNA to look at biodiversity of the river and using drones to get a bird's eye view of habitats. And you'll hear more about some of these exciting new research tools from other members of the FINS team in this presentation. Over this past 6 years, the FINS project has now evolved into a very large research platform that can help address many questions regarding the state of the Great River. For example, the state of wetlands, effects of water levels, impacts of invasive species, and recently, contaminant levels in fish. It has generated one of the largest fish data sets for the river, and this has led to numerous collaborations with universities and government agencies, and it's also helped fill critical knowledge gaps regarding species risk. It's also proved to be an amazing opportunity for the River Institute and the MCA to work together to study the river that we care so much about. I'd like to finish by thanking the FINS team members for making 2020 such a great year. They're like your family in the field, and to our funders that allow us to do this research and continue it on. We're gearing up right now for a very exciting field season to continue the project. And I hope you'll follow us along on social media as we report our findings throughout the summer. Next up is Amanda Nurse, a member of the FINS team, and she will be telling you a bit more about our addition of eDNA as a tool for the project. Thanks, and take it away, Amanda.
Thanks, Matt. I'm a research assistant at the River Institute. I've been working on the River Report, working on those technical reports for that project, and I've also been helping out with advancing the ability of the River Institute to analyze samples using environmental DNA. So for those of you that don't know, environmental DNA or eDNA is a newer technique in the science field where you can actually take a sample of water and cells in the form of scales for fish, for example, or any other cells that might be shed by an organism are left in the environment in the water column, and those cells can be collected just in the form of a water sample. And subsequently, those samples can be filtered, and you can do several lab techniques on them, such as DNA extraction and then PCR amplification, just so that you can see what DNA sequences are actually present. And it's a new tool to actually analyze what fish species are present in the body of water as an alternative and also in complement to actually sampling the fish species. So the idea is to try to reduce the harm that might be imposed on the fish by capturing and releasing them and just all of the stress that might be imposed on those species. So this winter, we've actually been able to order some DNA primers that allowed us to identify 2 species from some simulated water samples. And last summer, the FINS team went out and collected many water samples along the St. Lawrence River that were sent off to Queen's University to be analyzed. And a DNA library is going to be made so that we can look at which fish species are present and use DNA barcoding. So just looking at species-specific DNA sequences to try to determine which species were present at each site. So going forward, there is a project that the River Institute is collaborating with Stephen Lougheed from Queen's University and also Hugh Liu from the University of Toronto for the New Frontiers project. And the goal of this project is to just enhance and develop some eDNA techniques and also use drone surveying to potentially try to take some water samples using drones just to make the entire process a lot more user-friendly and advance our ability to do this. So I will pass it on to Emily Cormier.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Cormier and I'm a research assistant at the River Institute. I work primarily with Matt on the FINS team and multiple other projects that we were lucky enough to work on in 2020 and what we're going to be working on in 2021. So what's being shown on the screen in front of you is some of our contaminant work that we were very privileged to be able to take part of with the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne. So there were concerns with potential contaminants being leached into the environment based on a river which was dredged, which had PCB contamination, which can be a potential neurotoxin in the environment. So with this potential dredging, which was actually supposed to be removing some of this PCB contaminated sediment, there's a concern that some of that sediment might have been released into the water column and then ingested by fish further downstream. So we were tasked, well, the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne was tasked with trying to figure out if these contaminants have affected the fish species and whether these fish species are still safe for especially community members to consume. So we set out with completing some of this field work in the fall of 2020, and we're excited to be moving forward with them in 2021 to complete more of this field work. I'll pass it on to Evan, and he's going to tell you a bit more about what we were a part of this past fall.
Hi, so my name's Evan Rundle, and I've been with the Institute for about 8 months now, which I guess makes me one of the newest staff members. I'm really excited for the next field season. I think it's going to be really exciting. I'm just going to describe kind of this project and what we do in the field. So we go out on the boat and we set what's called gill nets, which is a stationary net that just floats in place between a set of floating buoys and anchors. And the fish get tangled up in it, like you can see in the picture. We come back later that day. We leave them out for about 3 hours, and we untangle the fish. And we're looking specifically for game fish that people might eat. So walleye, perch, bass. And we take those back to the Institute. We fillet them, and then we send the fillets off to be analyzed for the PCB contaminants. Yeah, I guess I'm going to pass it off now to Brian Hickey, who's going to tell you a bit about his research.
So as some of you probably already know, a lot of my work is focused on bats. I'm at a river institute, but I study bats. And one of the reasons I study bats at a river institute is bats are directly connected to the river through the insects they eat. Many bats, like this little brown bat, feed on insects that live in the bottom of the sediment as larvae. The insects emerge, become adult flying insects, and are eaten by bats. And because of where bats are in the food web, we don't really expect bats to have high mercury concentrations, but they're right off the map. They're higher than you'd expect for where they are in the ecosystem, where they are in the food web. And we're trying to do two things. We're trying to figure out why that is, and we're also trying to figure out how bats deal with such high concentrations of mercury. Because if these concentrations were in our bodies, we'd be in serious trouble. We'd show neurological damage from the effects of mercury. So the student in the picture here is Bailey Bedard, and she's a master's student at the University of Ottawa. And she's looking at the effects of mercury contamination in bats at a molecular level. She's trying to figure out what genes get turned on by exposure to mercury and what proteins those genes make in order to detoxify mercury and make it less toxic. Because it seems like bats are able to cope with much higher levels than humans, for example, would be able to. So this is really new and exciting work. When I'm not working on that project, I'm working on trying to enhance bat populations for those species that have declined in some cases by up to 90% due to white nose fungus. I'm going to turn it over now to Christina Charetz, who I also have the pleasure of working with, and she's going to talk about some even more exciting research about contaminants in fish.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Christina Charette. I'm a PhD student at the University of Quebec in Montreal. I'm also the education coordinator at the River Institute since 2015, and I do my research project in partnership with the River Institute. So my research project is about the invasive round goby that I'm sure you have seen in the river, and I'm looking at the impacts of the round goby on the food web, on the St. Lawrence River food web. And as you may know, the round goby is part of the food web because fish like smallmouth bass, yellow perch feed on the round goby. So I'm trying to understand if it's actually a good thing that the sport fish are feeding on the round goby or not, to see if it's some kind of junk food or maybe it's a really healthy meal for the sport fish. I'm also interested in looking at the role of the round goby as a vector of contaminant to sport fish, so especially mercury. But to do that, last year, it was my third year of field work. I went out in the St. Lawrence River, so from Cornwall to Montreal, and also at the mouth of the Ottawa River in Lake Two Mountains. And I go out, and just like Evan explained, I set gill nets to catch yellow perch and smallmouth bass, but also to catch round goby with other types of nets. And I also collect macroinvertebrates, which are at the base of the food web, so food for the fish. And also I collect other things like water data. So last fall, I was able to work on my samples to prepare them, to send them off to get analyzed. And I'm really hoping that soon I will be able to share with you my results and the outcomes of my research. So thank you, and I pass it on to Louis.
Merci, Christina. Bonsoir, tout le monde. My name is Louis Savard. I am the program leader for River Labs. And for those of you who don't know or aren't sure what River Labs is or does, we're the branch of the River Institute with a goal to assist companies, organizations, and municipalities to bridge the innovation gap between today and a more sustainable tomorrow. And as mentioned by a lot of my colleagues before me, 2020 presented some interesting and unique challenges that required us not to only adapt internally, but to adapt to our clients' realities and restrictions, given that we worked with a more commercial nature on our client base. But despite a few delays, I'm very, very proud of the team, and we've ensured that the projects kept going, that the analytical contracts through our laboratory were fulfilled, remained on track with a few delays on our side, but that was totally understandable. We had some interesting projects in 2020 that we completed. As an example, we had a collaboration between Food Cycle Science and 7 Leaf Cannabis growers located on Cornwall Island, and we were looking to assess the potential of a novel organics treatment technology to handle production waste. As you can imagine, there's a lot of organic waste being generated, and how could we basically close the loop, right? Make it a closed loop economy there. Another project that we completed was the continuation of our SLAIN project, as we call it here, which is the image you see on screen. This is a Ministry of the Environment supported project in the Lake Simcoe Basin. And what we're doing here is we're trying to use satellite imagery to identify nutrient hotspots on land. So basically phosphorus or plant food on land, and where are those hotspots that we can maybe direct management efforts a little bit better. Instead of looking at a whole watershed approach, you look at a much closer hotspot approach. De plus, je suis très fier également que notre laboratoire a été capable de continuer toutes les analyses clés pour nos clients grâce au travail de Crystal Martel, Luc Saint-Pierre et Sébastien Deschamps. Nous avons également rencontré de nouveaux partenaires très, très intéressants. Here we're talking like partners such as Graphoid, Planty, and Fieldless Farms that challenge us and are challenging us to play in the novel gray water recycling world, disruptive bioplastics for the fishing industry, and sustainable food production sectors. So you can see that we have our fingers in a lot of different areas here at River Labs. Although we sadly said goodbye to two very important part of our team, Mark McDougall and Natasha Posega in 2020, we definitely look forward to new projects, new staff, and to refine River Labs' social purpose. Speaking about new projects, I am very excited to be able to introduce a newest addition to the River Labs and the River Institute team, Mr. Lee Theodore, to speak to our Future Climate Leaders project. Lee, this next dance is yours.
Thank you very much, Louis. My name is Lee Theodore. Who I am is not as important as what I do, and what I do is facilitate the project called Future Climate Leaders. And the objective of this project is to bring our region closer to solutions as far as climate change is a concern to us. We're going to do this in 3 vehicles. The first vehicle is awareness. We're going to be doing a town hall meeting once a month, gathering special guests to come and have straight conversations with us and engage with the public. From there, we're going to be doing a outreach aspect through our website. Those that are interested are going to be able to be motivated through certain actions, do some carbon calculating, and figure out where they stand in their journey along this path of a climate change solution. And then finally, we'll have a development opportunity where we're going to allow individuals to get more in-depth knowledge so that they can be better suited for providing resources to the general public, and as well as just enhancing their approach towards climate change. Other than that, I look forward to a great year with all these fine folks, and you can take it away, Lexi Harkwell.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Hi, everybody. My name is Lexi Harkwell, and I'm a biologist, and I work on the education team along with Stephanie Garneau, Christina Charette, our education coordinator, and Brian Hickey, our program lead. I've been at the Institute for just over 2 years now, which means that exactly half of my time as an educator has been during the pandemic. And while my first year was spent a little chaotically learning new topics, meeting hundreds of students, and doing my best to demonstrate in programs how the heck we do what we do, I can confidently say that this past year has been significantly more chaotic. In March of last year, when the stay-at-home order was first announced, we were just 3 days away from our March break program, which is a week-long event at the Ontario Power Generation Visitor Centre. Staff spent many hours preparing for this event, and we were very sad to see it canceled. But we thought, we'll be home for a few weeks, this will all sort itself out, and we'll be back in Cooper Marsh for our favorite spring programming before we know it. It very quickly became apparent that staying at home and working online were going to become our new normal, and we would definitely not be spending our spring in the marsh as we'd hoped. And we sadly canceled the 19 programs we'd had booked for the next couple of months. But we decided we weren't going to let being stuck at home get us down, and we spent the next few weeks converting all of our content and programs into accessible online programming, bringing the outside into your home, if you will. We called it Outside In. In the spring, we developed downloadable learning and teaching resources, including spelling games, crafts, ID guides, and more on a wide variety of topics like invertebrates, fish, recycling, and my personal favorite, geology. In total, in April and May, we produced 40 lessons, both in French and English, that are available to teachers, students, and parents on our website. In the fall, those students returned to in-person learning. We were unable to return to our regular programming, so we converted all of our in-person programs to virtual ones, connecting our microscopes, showing real specimens, and adding interactive components like Kahoot quizzes to make virtual programming more fun and accessible for students. In some cases, like our fish tank program for the symposium, we were able to deliver kits of equipment to classes so they could follow along with us, testing soils and water quality. By the end of 2020, we were able to deliver 16 of the 19 programs that had been canceled. To say the pandemic has made our job as educators a bit more complicated would be true, but the fact of the matter is that it's also allowed us to grow our programs beyond what we would have previously thought possible, and Steph is very excited to tell you all about our new pandemic project.
So hi, my name is Stéphanie Garneau, and I'm a biologist and an educator at the River Institute for 2 years as of tomorrow. So yay me. So just like Lexi, a little bit more than half of my time working at the River Institute has been during the pandemic. So in 2020, the education team had to adapt and reinvent themselves. There was a lot of challenges. We had to find original ways of transforming our hands-on program into virtual but still interactive program. And I must say, we were a little bit hesitant at first. We took so much pride in giving unique hands-on experience to kids, and it felt almost unnatural to try and go into an online format. But with time, it became more and more evident that this pandemic thing wouldn't go away. So we finally cave in and realized that with online format, a whole new world of possibility had just opened up to us. I will say that one thing. So we bought a lot of new tech equipment in the past year. And I think the education team, but mostly Lexi, felt like it was Christmas every other month. So new challenges can also bring new opportunities. And one of them is our new program called Outside in Canada. So because of our new virtual world, it was now easier to reach out to students farther away. We could travel virtually anywhere. So that's how Outside in Canada was born. It was born with the idea that distance was no longer an obstacle and that we could easily reach out to students outside of Ontario and have our local students share their reality with others while staying at home safe. So in 2021, because this is still an ongoing project, local students will have the opportunity to share with students from British Columbia and experience the season change in both parts of Canada. This is a very exciting project that was born because of the pandemic, and it's, I think, a great proof that there's always good that can come out of any situation, and that you just need to look for it or make it happen if you can. So on that note, I will now pass it on to my colleague, Georgia.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My internet connection is not the best tonight. So I'm Georgia Bach. I'm the new Remedial Action Plan Coordinator here at the St. Lawrence River Institute. And I'm the St. Lawrence River Remedial Action Plan Coordinator for the St. Lawrence River Cornwall Area of Concern. So I started this position actually in December 2020. So I haven't been at this position too long. So even though I'm based at the River Institute, it's good to note that in this position, I represent all partners involved in the RAP. And I'm going to call the Remedial Action Plan the RAP throughout the rest of this talk just to make it easier. So the RAP in the nutshell is a long-term project for the St. Lawrence River here at Cornwall with the goal to restore the river. Several partners work together to oversee and partake in the project. And they all sit on the St. Lawrence River Restoration Council, which my position oversees or helps coordinate. Currently, we have 5 environmental challenges left to restore in the RAP and 2 that need further assessment. A environmental challenge that we are working on at the moment is beach closings. So you might hear about that later in the summer. Some remedial action plan projects that the River Institute is working on is a fish consumption study with the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, which I think Emily Cormier spoke to earlier. A CSS modeling project, which is for the contaminated sediment along the Cornwall waterfront, and it deals with the contaminated sediment strategy. And we also are doing a cleanup along the St. Lawrence River, in which we partnered with the Great River Network for. So we'll be cleaning up the harbor later this summer. So to learn more about the RAP, please go to stlawrenceriverrap.ca or email me at rap@riverinstitute.ca. There is so much more to tell. But for now, I'm going to pass it on to Lee, who will tell us more about the River Symposium.
Thanks very much, Georgia. And we're in the final stretch for all of our talks, so thanks for sticking with us this far. Just want to talk a little bit about the River Symposium. So we usually host that River Symposium in May each year, and of course last year in May, when COVID hit in March, we had to postpone that, and we moved it to October, and we were able to hold it a free virtual event at the end of October, which was really great. We pulled together an organizing committee that ended up, I think, having almost all of the River Institute staff on it, which really made it a really nice way to connect with everyone at the Institute through the year, through COVID. And we want to thank everyone who participated, either by presenting or by attending. We had over 250 people register for the event. So as a few other people have said, especially the education team, you know, now that we weren't hosting that event in person anymore and moved it to online, it meant that we have the potential to have a much greater reach. So a big thank you to everyone for your attending in the past, and we'd like to let you know that this next River Symposium will be in October again, and it will also be free and online, and the topic is global challenges, local concerns, and we always have a science day and a community day, and everyone is welcome. So keep a lookout on our newsletters for when the website is up, and we look forward to seeing you all there. I'll pass over to Stephanie Hildebrand.
Hello again. So I'll be talking about Science and Nature Untapped. Originally, this is an event that we did in person. It's a speaker series that we did once a month, and we would do it in a pub in Cornwall, Ontario. So of course, as we all know, we could no longer go to the pubs because of the pandemic. And so we brought the event online and called it Science and Nature Untapped. The great part of it, as my colleagues have mentioned, is that being online means that we can reach a broader audience at a greater distance. It's much easier to attend. And I think it will be wonderful to be able to do it in person again, but now we'll be able to also record those events and still make it available to everybody. So we are looking forward to that day. And I want to say thank you to all of the speakers we've had, and to our future speakers as well. And so our next event will be June 2nd. We'll be talking about permaculture with Audrey Wagner. So I will pass it back on to Christina Collard.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Wow. That's a lot of speakers. We know how to really cram them in. That's almost all of our staff actually were able to speak tonight. So I am the program leader for administration and fundraising at the River Institute, and have been for the past 27 years. So wow, hard to believe that time goes by so fast. But at the same time, I must congratulate the dedicated staff this evening for all their hard work. COVID was definitely a unique situation, but we persevered with resilience and managed to, as you could tell, pull our programs off, our research. We created new and innovative education programs. You know, it's just fabulous to see that, especially all these young minds that we have. You know, it's really awesome. I just also want to tell you that I want to thank Jen Lozon, my assistant as well, who works day and day with me. She's my right-hand man or woman, and she does a fabulous job too. And so, you know, we always want to thank the people that work with us. The River Institute has no core government funding, just so you know. We have to get our funding through grants and programs, sponsorships, donors, and through partners and collaborations. So that's something people are always surprised about. They always say, oh, you guys are government, you know, but no, we're not government. And we work really hard at, you know, I mean, sometimes there's like over 150 applications that goes in for funding a year just to keep our organization going. But because of COVID, we persevered again and managed to come out in a positive situation. And that's thanks to our donors and sponsors and people who believe in our cause and believe in our Great River Institute. So we're so proud of that, and also proud of our river champions. Those are local donors and sponsors from businesses. And that River Champions program started in 2016. And we raised over $300,000 for our organization. So we're really proud, and we can't thank you enough for that. I also want to just thank quickly Steph Hildebrand for hosting our session tonight, and I was going to call it our show. And also, just if you look at the beautiful pictures that are in our this evening's presentation, they are all thanks to her. Her photography has just been an insight and a win for our River Institute, and just top notch, bringing us up to another level after 27 years. If I go back and look at some of the original documents that we created, boy, we really needed help back then. So this is part of our annual report, which we actually just had, we launched it, and we'll launch it on our website. So when you're finished this evening or tomorrow, just go to riverinstitute.ca. It's on our homepage. It'll be our full report, similar to this presentation, that you can look at and have a read. And feel free anytime to reach out to any of the staff at any time. Follow us on our social media, our newsletter, support us, be a donor, volunteer, whatever you'd like to help us be more successful for, and I might not be around for 25 more years, but I was young when I started at the River Institute, which is always a joke. So thank you so much for being with us, and I'll pass it back to Steph, who's going to take some questions if there are any for this evening.
Hello, thank you so much, Chris. And I just, after seeing the whole presentation and working with all these amazing people, I'm so proud to be part of the River Institute. And I think this is probably the same as how many of us feel. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to all my colleagues for presenting. So now this is the question period, and I'll just make a little note around I guess 7:55. I might cut you off to just say goodbye to everybody who's watching from your TV. So we are doing this live on Facebook as well, which is new for us. And so maybe I'll go through what we received on Facebook, and then I'll go through on Teams. But this would be a great time to send us your questions. So we got a lot of hellos from people from across the country. And the first question we got, sorry, I'm looking at my phone as I do this. So we have a question from Liz Rose. She's asking, and I think this might be a Matt question, but we'll see who wants to reply. So I'm curious, given the constant lockdowns throughout Ontario, if any of the groups have noticed a significant change in the ecosystem. And also, has removing humans for extended periods of time shown any change?
So Matt, you can jump in after I was asked by some people to have a first stab at this. So that's a great question. And there have certainly been at a broad scale and also at a local scale some examples where, for example, global carbon emissions were lower than expected because people weren't driving cars. And there have been some examples where animals are less frequently disturbed when we're in total lockdown. But one of the other things that's happened is a lot of nature areas have become even busier because people have such a limited number of things they can do legally and safely outside their homes. They're taking up nature walks, bird watching, and so it might actually be having the reverse effect, more disturbance in some areas. So yeah, I think we won't know for sure until the whole wave passes through and we're back to normal exactly what has happened. One of the things that is probably not a good thing is now we're ordering items we need one item at a time, and they're being shipped in small boxes. And on my neighborhood, and I'm part of it too, because I need stuff sometimes. There's an Amazon truck on my street several times a day, and that's maybe not a good news story.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Liz, for your great question. And sorry, Matt, for putting you on the spot. It was actually the next question that I think is for you. So John Slider, if he asks if eel populations have decreased, are any efforts being made to restore them?
That's a great question. Eels were such a big part of the ecosystem, going back thousands of years, probably one of the largest biomass in the near shore of any fish species. And they're 1 to 2% of that now. So it's a really sad conservation story. And there's lots of reasons why that happened. There's one of the main reasons that they have these barriers across their migratory paths. They're born in the Sargasso Sea. They come into nearshore areas like the St. Lawrence River, the Great Lakes, where they live most of their life, and then they have to return back to the Sargasso Sea to spawn. And so every time we put these barriers up, they can't do that. So some of the conservation measures that are taking place to help restore their population is to improve access around these barriers. And that takes the form of putting ladders on hydroelectric facilities, for example, where eels can scale these ladders and bypass the dams. There's also a program in place where mature eels, before they return back down the river, are collected live and then transported live past some of these dangerous, potentially dangerous routes for them, and then released safely back further downstream in the river. So that's happening. We've also shut down the fishery for the eels as well to remove that fishing pressure. And it just raises a lot of great questions too about what the ecosystem would have been like if they were still here and we had things like round gobies come in, and wood eels have helped keep those under control because of their massive population in the St. Lawrence River. So more good research questions, but good question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. And I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody who's watching from Kojiko, your TV. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next month. So with that, we'll go to our next question. Shan is asking, would invasive species such as mussels and round gobies help to sustain sports fish in light of impaired lower trophic organisms such as phyto and zooplanktons? Who would like to take that one?
I'll take it, I think. Christina here. So it's a great question. So if you think about the food web, so we have the invasive round goby that feed on the zebra mussel. So the zebra mussel will filter a lot of water. And along with that, it will also filter phytoplankton, which is at the base of the food web. And for example, zooplankton would feed on phytoplankton. But when we think about the round goby feeding on the mussel, we could think like, well, they're kind of controlling the mussel population, and then maybe like there's less filtering happening and more phytoplankton available. But actually, we don't really know if the round goby have a really strong impact on the zebra mussels population, because they eat other stuff as well. So they don't only feed on zebra mussels. So I would say that like maybe not for this one. And when we think about the round goby being fed by the smallmouth bass, for example, feeding on the goby, we've seen in the past that since the introduction of the round goby, the smallmouth bass are getting bigger. They're getting bigger, but we don't know if it's actually like directly linked to the round goby. So it might be sustaining the sport fish population, but we're not sure exactly. So that's why I'm interested to look at if the round goby is actually a really healthy meal and influencing in a positive way the fish body condition. So I hope that answers a little bit the question. If anyone else wants to jump in, you can if you want to.
Anyone else want to jump in onto that one, or did Christina answer that question perfectly for you guys?
I'll just jump in, and I think Chris did a great job. Christina did a great job of answering that, and it's an interesting one when you think about the and Sean, I think, is coming from us from Lake Ontario, which has a different food web than the St. Lawrence River. Very much, the St. Lawrence River has its unique food web in terms of so much happens in close down to the bottom and to the sediments where, because the river is more shallow than the lake. So in a way, those zebra mussel, that zebra mussel round goby linkage has different impacts than we see in the lake, and yet we do know that the sports fish have been eating the round gobies, particularly as Christina mentioned. So it's interesting to think about those differences between the lake and the river. I just wanted to add that point. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you, Jeff. So I had a question. I'm not sure if I saw on Facebook or on Teams, but somebody had asked if, since we've been doing the Science and Nature online, how our reach has been. So definitely we've seen more people coming from our region. So from Kingston or Brockville, Ottawa, when usually, you know, doing the drive up for an hour and going back wasn't necessarily feasible. So that's been very, very positive. I hope that answers your question. So I'm just going through all the comments. We've got a lot of comments of support. I'm wondering, should Jeff, would you like me to read out the comments of support?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so we'll start. Yes, okay. So we'll start with that. Well, I don't know who it is. It's anonymous. They said not a question, but a huge thank you to the entire River Institute team for the important work you do for our community and beyond. Always excited to see what you will do next. So thank you very much, anonymous, for that that comment, I suppose. And from Jean-Marc Ladou, he says, congratulations on such a productive year and all your success considering the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. I saw we had a comment for the Bay of Quinte wrap. So congratulations, Jeff, from Shan. Your technical and moral support for the Bay of Quinte wrap is greatly appreciated. And so I got a few other congratulations. Let me check the Facebook, see if there's any more questions. If you have any questions, this is a really good time for you to send it to us. We'll give you a few minutes buffer time to send it. Otherwise, let's see. So Melanie Baker Brown, she's saying, kudos for the great transition to the virtual Science and Nature Untapped series, made for great dinner theater during the pandemic. And then I answered her question from before about our reach. Luc Gerard, I see you on Facebook a lot. He says, great work, guys, awesome team. So thank you so much for your support. Glenn Grant says, oh, no, it was just I'm not quite sure what he says the city of Cornwall. So I'm not quite sure. I think maybe he was answering something that was said earlier. Rob Fry, he says, as Stephen Hawking said it, intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. So I think that's a that's very fitting for this. Very informative, thank you. This is Karen Rundle, so I suppose she's related to Evan. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, Norman Peters has a question. He says, can you post a list of fish identified in the surveys taken below the power dam? So maybe Matt might want to speak to that.
Sure. Hi, Norm. Yes, for sure, we can post that. And I think I want to say it's between 50 and 60 species, probably, if you're talking about Lake St. Francis area. So we can for sure post that.
Great, thank you, Matt. And I believe this might be the end of the questions period. I haven't received anything else. Would anybody from the River Institute staff like to add before we say goodbye?
I'll just jump in and thank you, Stephanie, for doing an amazing job like you've been doing all year. And I just want to thank all of the staff members for their contributions, and for all of you who are listening in and you know, sending in those questions and those comments. We really appreciate it, and thanks for listening to our story. And we're looking forward and really excited about 2021. So with that, back to you, Stephanie, and you can close up.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you to everybody who attended. I saw there was a lot of people watching from Facebook Live. So I think maybe that will make it a bit easier for more people to watch the Dex Science and Nature Untapped, which is June 2nd, and we'll be learning about permaculture. So with that, I think, wait, there might be one question that came in. Okay, just a thank you from Shan, and good night, and thank you for tuning in. See you next time.